Okay, here is chapter 2, and this is all about the economics. Fortunately, I've taught economics, and my undergraduate degree was in economics, so understanding of economics is an important thing in business. Again, we're looking at big picture stuff moving in. Production and the economy. That's really what it's all about. How much are we outputting or how much are we producing? When nations produce a lot, the economy goes well, people's lives are better, people make more money. When economies don't produce much or have back steps in production, trickle through the economy where people are laid off and there's less money to spend and things like that. So let's talk about what I think there are a couple of important tools. Another point that I want to say about studying economics is that this is an entire discipline of study, and it's difficult to do in just one chapter. Almost impossible to really do much justice in one chapter, and it's very difficult to do just in one little 5-minute video that I'm doing here. So I want to touch on some of the important things that are that help make the economy what it is. The fun, interesting story about the father or the foundings of economics would be Adam Smith, you've heard of maybe, and he was the founder in 1776. In 1776, he wrote the textbook about how the invisible hand of the economy works. It's how the wealth of nations, how the needs of society are naturally provided. When people need work, people are there to pay them for the output. Very basic, simple way of looking at the natural flows of the economy. A little bit more advanced thinking is a circular flow model. These are all from the book. You can find it right in the book. Circular flow model suggests that, let's say we are households or consumers, we're buyers, we have buying power with businesses. So we go here. We also work for businesses. So we are putting factors of input. If you take all the aggregate entire people in a nation, many of them work and many of them buy the same things that others work for. And as a result, the businesses pay for the work that's been done, and the businesses send the goods and services and get payments for that. So that's how the basic circular flow model works of the economy. Kind of a big picture, very simplistic way of looking at the economy. The next thing to look at in the economy is what we call supply and demand. You probably heard about this in high school. And we know that at high prices, people don't want to buy. At high prices, people want to sell. Of course, if I'm a seller, I'm going to sell at high prices. I'd love to be selling up at this high price here. But it's not going to happen because people want to buy lower prices. So basically, these are scatter point diagrams of people's willingness to buy and sell. Blue line is the supply curve, so the people that are producing the widgets, the stuff, they would like to sell at a higher price, but the demand curve, or the people that are buying, only suggests that they would buy this many at this price. Few people buy at a high price. Sure, that's great, but that's not that many people. And if you bring the price down to the lowest possible, of course you're going to have a lot of people that would like to buy it, but maybe you're not making any money. So this is, of course, called the equilibrium point. If your boss asks you, what should we price our stuff at? There's an important question. That's an advanced question in the business world, is what's the exact proper place to put the price. And one of the many tools would be supply and demand. So what are people willing to pay for it? And what are we willing to drop our price to sell it for? So that's a interesting way to look at pricing and how consumers behave. Because if people have a lot more money, they're going to pay more. If there's a bad recession, they're going to hold on to their money and not pay less. If inputs to production change, then the supply curve is going to change. If inputs are becoming less expensive, like technology drops prices, then it's going to drop for every producer, and this curve will shift. So there's a lot to learn about supply and demand curves. I find it kind of interesting. There's a lot to it. Other key indicators would be GDP, and this is something that we hear all the time. It's an okay measurement of the economy. Think of these things as dials on the dashboard of your car. How fast are you going? That's what the GDP is. How much are we producing? That's the speedometer, tachometer. I don't know. It's a measurement, and so it has no meaning or relativity unless we give it relativity. You can't say today's GDP is 20 trillion. What does that mean? Well, that means all the output in a given period of time, in a given space, being a country. Colorado can have a GDP, California has a GDP, but for the most part, people look at nations. How much is a nation outputting? The total accumulation of final price of goods and services in the economy produced in a period of time. So why is it useful? Well, we can compare per capita GDP. Take the whole GDP. America produces 20 trillion a year. How many people in the country? 320 million. Do the math. That's how much each person outputs, believe it or not. It's important to be able to use that to understand other economies. How do we do stacked up against Germany or South Africa or Brazil? What's their GDP like? The other thing that GDP is an important metric is change over time. What's GDP? What did we do last year that helped our GDP? Or what are we doing now that is dropping GDP? So there's many economic indicators, but that's a good one. A couple other ones would be employment rate. There's reasons why we have unemployment. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but right now, what's interesting is in America, sometimes you have employment where you don't have the right type of job for the right person. The person doesn't have the right skills for the job. That's one of the things. Now, I want to move it along here. I want to talk about fiscal policy and monetary policy. Very important things. Real quick. Fiscal policy is taxes. Everything that comes in taxes, everything that goes out for taxes. So think about all the government spending, welfare programs, police, education, this school, all the things that taxes pay for. That's fiscal policy. And we elect officials to spend that money wisely, to spend our tax dollars wisely. I question whether or not they are, and you should question whether or not they're spending our money wisely. The other thing that economists need to understand is monetary policy, and that's, like it sounds, it's money. How much is in the money supply? How much money do we have circulating through our economy? And the Fed, or the Federal Reserve, is the guys who have a role in controlling that. Now, there's controversy with the Fed and its inception, but for the most part, they control interest rates. They control the supply of money, how much money is out there. They do control the printing of money, but we try not to print money because if you print a lot of money, you have inflation. It becomes less value. So everybody says, oh, the Fed just prints money. Well, no, they're in charge of printing the money, but they're in charge of not printing too much money and having just the right amount. So there's a big balancing act. They also control some of the rules about how much you keep in the bank. So that's what the Fed does, and that's important because that's monetary policy. The Fed is an independent, non-political group that stands outside and manages monetary policy. Super important group, need to be real smart, and they're powerful. It's important to manage the money well. If you don't manage the money well in a country, you can have hyperinflation or devaluation of currency. All kinds of things can happen that are pretty bad for the economy, so it's important. Let's see the other things we have. I think that's it for this one right here. We're right about at our time limit, and thank you very much. That's economics, chapter 2.